GG muted. You're welcome, TK Money, for everything that we've been able to do. Muted. That's how we start all the streams, chat. So welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. My name is Alok Kanoja. Just a reminder that everything we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken for educational or entertainment purposes only. And yeah, nothing is intended to be taken as medical advice, even though I am a medical doctor. And we will have a different medical doctor on today as well. And nothing he says, I think, is to be taken as medical advice. It's supposed to be taken as policy advice or public health advice. But if y'all have a question or concern, please go, seek a licensed professional. So, so we have a pretty cool guest on today, chat, who I'm not sure if he has the most followers that we've ever had in terms of guests on stream. We've had some pretty big people, but I think in a different kind of way, he has the widest following of people. And that is the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, will be joining us in about an hour and 20 minutes. And because, he's a busy dude. And so we've been thrilled. So first of all, we're honored by the opportunity. We're thrilled by the work that the Surgeon General's office has been doing. I don't know if y'all have been, if y'all pay attention to this stuff, maybe not, right? Because we're here on Twitch, but that's that's what's so cool, is he's going to show up and talk a little bit about what work his office has been doing. And the really wild thing is, over the last 4 months or something, they've released 3 major advisories or reports about the state of things. And what I think is super cool is that the 3 reports that they've released are not diagnosis based. So they're just plain based. But so the first advisory that they released was on youth mental health. So I think it's really awesome that, the largest or highest office in the United States is really focused on youth mental health. I think the other thing that's super cool is a month later, they released something on loneliness and isolation. So that too, I think, is huge because it's a report that focuses on something that people are struggling with that isn't necessarily a diagnosis. And I think this is something that maybe I'm in the minority here, but so I love being a psychiatrist. I think psychiatrists are great. I think therapists are great. And I think that a lot of what we're struggling with today in terms of our mental health cannot be solved in a therapist's office. A lot can be, and they can certainly help. But I think that there are macro level changes to the world that we live in that are negatively impacting our mental health. And we require macro level solutions beyond what an individual can do in someone's office, right? So I think about maybe 20% of the HG community is in therapy of some sort, which is fantastic, right? So we encourage y'all to seek mental health support if that's what y'all need, or even if you don't know what you need. I think it's worthwhile to get an evaluation. But I think that there's bigger problems here that you can't fix. And so what I'm really thrilled about and really grateful for is that the Surgeon General's office is working on these bigger level problems, and that they're not saying that we have a depressive crisis. Maybe they do say that somewhere else. I'm not quite sure. But I think it's really cool that they're targeting things really where the problem is, which is loneliness and isolation. And what they're really trying to do, and I think what they're successfully doing, is coalescing support from all of these different dimensions of society. And even the fact that they're willing to come on to Twitch and talk with us today, I think is a huge signal of the way that they're approaching problems, which is that they're utilizing tools that are available. They're really focusing on fixing problems that people are dealing with, as opposed to operating purely within the medical model. And that model is great for a lot of things, but when it comes to public health, I think it's really awesome that they're kind of focusing this way. And then recently, as in a week or 2 ago, they released an advisory on social media and mental health. And so I think they're really recognizing that, okay, this is not just the same old thing over and over and over again, and we need to really think about these things. The other thing that's really wild, I don't know if y'all know this, but generally speaking, advisories like this are not released on a monthly basis. So they're released maybe one or two a year, I think. I mean, if you look at historically what surgeon generals have been able to accomplish, or surgeons general have been able to accomplish, like it's the pace that they're putting stuff out and how hard they're working is also like on a different level, which also gives me hope because like technology is advancing really fast. The impacts to our mental health are advancing really fast. The world is like rapidly changing and the rate of change is increasing. And so it's really awesome to see the pace at which they're actually like keeping up with problems that people are struggling with. So we're really thrilled to have them on. Dr. Murthy will be showing up maybe in about an hour or so. And so in the meantime, we're just going to vibe and hang out and chill. And I think we can also talk a little bit about, like, we'll answer questions. We'll go over a couple of things. But we're going to answer some questions, do a quick recap of Mental Health May. And basically, I want to talk to y'all for about an hour. And then based on our discussion, we, as Twitch chat, will talk to the Surgeon General of the United States at about 1:30 CST. Okay? So if y'all have the Surgeon General, yes, we will have the Surgeon General on next week. Yeah, so, you know, so I think if there's like stuff that y'all, you know, if we want to talk about, like what are the things that are the most important to us? Because we have arguably like the highest doctor in the land of the United States who's we're going to be talking with. So, you know, whatever y'all want to ask, like whatever topics like we float to the surface and sort of, you know, come up at the end of the hour is like what we'll talk to them about. Okay. Hi, Jake and Bake. Good to see you, dude. So yeah, tuning in from Costa Rica. Welcome, Barely Gaming 22. Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm curious what flaws they see in Western view on medicine. That's really interesting. So how weed affects your brain before the age of 21. So that's something that we have asked and answered like 15 bazillion times, but we can do it again. We actually had we've had like a couple of streams about weed. Y'all know that, right? So we did one interview with an addiction psychiatrist, a guy named Dr. Shu, who's like an expert on weed. You know, the weird thing is that I think he's an expert on treating weed, but you can never tell. And then we did another like commonly, you know, asked questions about like things like, we had a whole stream where we did like 15 to 20 questions on weed and provided like evidence-based answers. So a really common, like, so here's something that people don't understand. So someone's asking a question about before the age of 21, you know, what impact does weed have on your brain? And NIDA, the National Institutes of Drug Abuse, Drug and Alcohol, something, I don't know exactly what it stands for, released an awesome report on weed, which I strongly recommend y'all check out. But basically the real challenge with weed before the age of 21 is when you use marijuana in a developing brain, it alters some of the way that your brain wires. So a lot of people will wonder, for example, is marijuana a gateway drug? And the answer is probably yes. And the reason is not like, it's not like necessarily like a moralistic thing where like, oh my God, now that you use weed, you're a degenerate. What really happens is when you have a developing brain, and especially the dopaminergic circuitry, the reward circuitry of the brain, and when you add marijuana to the mix, it makes parts of your brain hypersensitive to the benefits of other drugs. So the reward that you get from other substances actually gets enhanced, which makes you more vulnerable to addiction. So like, that's just a good example of how like, yeah, marijuana is a gateway drug, you know? Yeah. Yeah, so we can talk. So we'll see. Like we've got, you know, we'll ask a little bit. It's interesting. So I had a feeling y'all would have lots of questions about substance use, and you know, we'll see if we can get to those for sure. Yeah, so this is a cool question. Do you think most of mental health problems we see today come from how much technology advancements have outpaced the ability of our brains to biologically adapt? That's a great question. Uh, yeah, so that's cool. So we'll ask, what are the key public health issues currently facing the US? We'll definitely ask that, or something in that vein. Um, Any advice for seeing your therapist today for the first time in a while? You're nervous? Just share that with your therapist. Hey, I know it's been a while. I'm feeling nervous. So here's a pro tip. We get lots of questions and concerns about therapy all the time. I'm feeling nervous. It's my first time. How do I tell my therapist that I feel like they're being a little bit judgmental? I'm feeling like therapy is not really working, or that this therapist is not right for me. What should I do? I think there's a really good answer to all of those questions, and it's the same. It's actually talk to your therapist about it. So this is what's really weird, is a lot of people think like, oh my God, if I tell my therapist that I'm not getting helped, will it make them feel bad? It could. But that's not your responsibility. When you go to therapy, your responsibility is not to like protect the therapist from feeling bad. Should you be like, you should not be abusive or anything like that. So don't be toxic. But like, if something is not working for you, just think through the scenarios for a second. One is you just pretend that everything is okay, and then you keep going to therapy and you don't get helped. And even as a therapist, I dislike it when my patients do that. I like it when they tell me, hey, this is not working for me. And then we can problem solve around, okay, what is it that isn't working for you? What can we do better? What do you want to focus on? How can we improve? And like all those questions become really, really important, right? And so I strongly encourage y'all to talk to your therapists if there's any concern that you have about y'all's relationship. And you could say even something like, hey, I think you're, I feel like you're being sort of moralistic and judgmental. Or this is another really common one that we hear a lot. I feel like you're telling me to mend relationships that are toxic. And I'm curious about like why you think it is important for me to repair my relationship with my estranged parents or whatever. Like I'm here, like where do you get, like, where is that coming from? Like, what is your value system based on that? And then the other thing that I'll sometimes do when patients tell me like, hey, I don't think this is working, is sometimes I will say, okay, so do you want to try to problem solve it with me or help me understand what the problem is? And I can try to refer you to someone who may be more able to help you. Right? So don't be afraid to respectfully challenge their comments. I would say you should respectfully challenge their comments, and it's okay to even be afraid to respectfully challenge their comments. You can feel what you feel, and you can even say, hey, I feel a little bit afraid sharing this with you. Here's what my experience has been so far. Why are these scheduled when I have meetings? That's a good question. Because we weren't familiar with your schedule, Space Herp. I think if you let us know, if you share your Google Calendar with us, maybe we could try to accommodate you. Don't actually share your Google Calendar with us. That's a mistake. If a patient is a narcissist, would you tell them? Absolutely. I've told many patients that they have features of narcissism. I don't know if they are a narcissist. So let's understand something about narcissism. Narcissism is a defense mechanism. It's a feature, not a bug. So our brain has certain ways of like building up our ego and protecting ourselves from hurt. And narcissistic defenses are one way of doing that. Now, the problem is that sometimes that's kind of like the one tool in our toolkit that we use, and we sort of use it way too much and way too often and way too exclusively. That's when it becomes a problem. But oftentimes what I'll tell people, if you're afraid that you are a narcissist, or people are like, because it's such a judgmental thing, what I'll usually explain to people is here's how to understand narcissism, even if you were a narcissist. Your brain or your being, your mind grew up in an environment where you had to advocate for yourself, like zealously, right? You had to pump yourself up because of the environment that you grew up in, because people around you were putting you down all the time. Or what happened is you grew up in an environment where you discovered that there was one strategy to get your needs met, which is to be incredibly narcissistic. So either you were being put down a lot, or you were being compared to other people a lot, and people were like, this person is good and you are bad. So you had to lean into that, and you had to be like, I am good. Here's why I'm good. Here's how I'm going to show you I'm good. You had to learn that was the rules of the game that you played. Or what happened is you grew up in a household where someone else was super narcissistic, and you discovered something really simple. In this world, if you want to get your needs met, narcissism is the way to meet them. The way to get your needs met is to ignore the needs of everybody else, because that's what someone did to you. They're like, hey, I don't care about you. I'm not going to be empathic. I'm just going to focus on me. Therefore, all of my needs are going to get met, and you can go screw yourself. And you're like, oh, okay, this is how the game is played. Because when you are faced with a narcissist, sometimes the only way to carve out space for yourself is to be a narcissist yourself. And so you start becoming narcissistic because that's what you were taught, right? Some kids are taught to pray before they eat. Some kids are taught to say please and thank you. Some kids are taught to be narcissists to get your needs met. And once we understand that, then I can tell people, hey, I think the reason that you behave narcissistically is because this was the rule. These were the rules of life that you learned. And by the way, here are the advantages and here are the disadvantages. Then I ask all of my patients one question. Do you want to continue living life this way? Do you want to continue seeing the world this way? Or do you want a different approach to life? And they get to choose. And oftentimes when it's framed like that, when you understand where the narcissism comes from, how it's not something you are, it's something that you carry. It's something that you are strapped onto. And oftentimes these people don't want to be like that anymore. They want to be able to be empathic. They want to be able to be secure, because at the root of narcissism is insecurity. And then they're totally cool with it. Because in that moment, I'm actually, hopefully, treating them with respect. And that's really what I go by. I go by like respect and compassion. And it's not like, I'm there to, gloss over all the challenges in their life. It's about acknowledging what your experience is, and that being a narcissism, we blame people for it. But I don't think we really understand as a whole how painful being a narcissist is. You can't trust people. Relationships are shaky. The only person you can count on is yourself. People don't treat you with respect, so you have to demand it from everyone around you. You're not secure. Life isn't easy. It's really hard. Narcissism sucks. Like, it sucks to be a narcissist or live with narcissism. What's the opposite of narcissism? The opposite of narcissism is confidence. And that may confuse y'all. You may say, but wait, aren't narcissists really confident? No, they're the exact opposite. So if y'all want to understand the difference between narcissism and confidence, a narcissist derives their value from the people around them. So whether I feel good about myself depends on whether other people feel good about me. Someone who's confident derives their value from within. So other people can say whatever they want about me. It's not going to affect my view of myself. So they're actually complete opposites. A narcissist may act confident, but they're not truly confident. In fact, the opposite. They're actually insecure, which is why they need to convince everyone that they are so great. Whereas the confident person doesn't need to convince anyone because they know their worth. Does that make sense? Is there any topic that you would like to make videos about but haven't yet? That's a question for y'all. So you tell us. So let's talk about May for a second. So in May, we did a lot of cool stuff. And I just want to give actually a quick shout out to our team, because this would not be possible without our team. And I know that y'all think that HG is Dr. K, but it's not really Dr. K. So there's like me, and then there's Skruthi, who's like CEO. But we've got people like Mike and Brandon and Lindsay, who runs our coaching program, Hannah, who does partnerships. So Hannah was super instrumental in setting this up. So huge shout out to Hannah. We've got Kabir, who is also epic, does things for y'all that are great. Y'all may have tuned into a secret thing that we are doing, and it's been going really well in May. We also have Jake, who runs our research stuff. And then we've got like comms support, you know, our devs, our HR person, our designer. So if you guys like, if y'all like this overlay, y'all can thank Tristan. And then we've got coaching ops manager, Alex, who was also featured in our APA documentary. So I don't know if y'all know this, but we were at the American Psychiatric Association about 10 days ago, and we were featured there as an innovator in mental health. And a big part of that was like the peer support program that we built here at HG. So our coaching program has really, really good outcomes. And also is like, we're supporting people in 121 countries across the globe. And so a big part of what we are is like AOE healing, and we're global. And Alex is a huge part of that. Acadia is also awesome, has joined the team somewhat more recently, but is really responsible. If y'all are tuning into our socials and stuff, that's all Acadia. And then we've got Susie, who handles customer service. So huge shout out to the team, because they really help us a lot. And it's not just me by any means. And if y'all like, you know, like Dr. K's guide and all that design and stuff, like all that stuff is like designed by our dev team. And it's super cool. Like, you know, this kind of choose your own adventure. So here's the basic problem with like mental health resources that we see, is that they're linear. And the problem is that like when I sit with a patient, I have a ton of stuff that I know, right? Not trying to flex, but like you learn all kinds of different stuff. But what does this person need? So really, if you kind of think about it, the job of a therapist is to figure out, to essentially be like an AI or a search engine for you. Because they have all of this access to information. And what is the information that you need? That's where their real value comes in. And so the problem is, if you like take a course on depression, like it'll be like depression 101, 102, 103, 104. But which parts of that do you need? And so what we tried to do, and this is awesome, like I went to our devs and I said, hey, here's my problem, is if you guys want me to teach something about depression, not everyone needs everything. And in fact, I'd say even half the people that I talk to don't even meet criteria for a clinical illness, even though they feel depressed. And I think their problem, for example, is that they have no direction in life. Or their problem is that they have a particular like challenge, like, let me just think about. Yeah, so they use hopelessness as a defense mechanism. And so this is not someone who necessarily meets clinical criteria. It's just their mind has a particular pattern of acting. So they can't afford to ever want something. And why is that? Because they're afraid that they won't be able to get it. They lack confidence in themselves. And if you lack confidence, your attempts at success will result in failure, which hurts. So instead, what you're going to do is you're going to become hopeless. And if you become hopeless, then you won't want anything. And if you won't want anything, you won't strive for anything. And if you won't strive for anything, you won't fail at anything. And you won't feel like a reject. So instead, you choose hopelessness over failure. And then you kind of get stuck. Because now if I'm hopeless, you don't strive for anything. So how do you tackle that problem? So I went to our devs and I said, like, here's the problem is I don't know what people need, but like people need all kinds of different stuff. And so we came up with something called Dr. K's Guide, which is like a choose your own adventure, right? Where it's like, you may not need this information, so you don't have to watch it. There's like a branching logic, which is based on video games. It's kind of like, okay, we're going to like, you know, play this video game where you get to choose which road to go down. And so like our dev team is awesome. They helped us build that. It's gone really, really well. You know, people seem to really enjoy it and find like a lot of value out of it. So our team is awesome. Our content team is fantastic. You know, they help us do things like Twitch and YouTube and whatnot. And so huge shout out to all of them. Yeah, dude's name is actually Dragon. Not, and I was like, wait, is your name actually Dragon? And he's like, yeah, not a nickname. Nate the Nomad. Me, I started therapy 4 months ago, and it has helped me with my hopelessness greatly and is setting me on a better path. Good for you, Nate the Nomad. Yeah, Mythanatic is saying, I've definitely been unsure whether I have depression or something else. So this is something we've said a lot, but I'm going to say it again. A lot of times people think that seeking mental health support or like seeing a licensed clinician, therapist, psychiatrist, whatever, is like, how do I know whether I need to see someone? How do I know whether like what could be depression is so bad? Like, does it meet the threshold for seeking treatment? It's the wrong question. So I get this question all the time from parents. How do I know when my kid has a problem and that I need to take them to see a professional? The whole point of a professional is it's not your job to know. Half of what we learn as professionals is diagnosis. The other half is treatment. We're not all treatment. Half of what we do is diagnosis. And one of the best things that you can actually get, one of the highest value pieces that I've delivered as a clinician is to tell someone that I don't believe that they have a mental illness. This is not a pathology. This is something else. Because that's a huge like deviation in your course, right? So I've had patients come into my office and we've kind of talked about, you know, I've treated them for depression. Very formative moment for me. Happened in residency. So I had a patient that I was doing therapy with for like 2 years. And then one day they said, hey, like, it feels like some things aren't getting better. And I was like, okay, are you having trouble getting out of bed? And they're like, no. Are you having trouble working? No. Are you like exercising? Yeah. Are you eating healthy? Yeah. And then he's like, I still feel depressed. And I was like, bro, you ain't depressed. You're unhappy. There's a difference. Depression you've managed. Now you got to figure out how to be happy, which is completely different. Right? So there's a lot of value to seeing a clinician just for an evaluation. Do you think dismissive avoidant attachment is real? Absolutely. And if so, it is something that can be cured? Absolutely. 100% to both. Are you going to make the U.S. Surgeon General cry? If y'all want me to. I'm not going to make him cry. I will allow him to cry, chat, if he wants. How in the world is Dr. K not 25, 26? That's a healthy gamer for real. What do you mean? Age? Bruh, I'm 40. Bruh. Yeah. You look 28. Thank you, chat. Fake news? I wish. You're not 40. I mean, maybe you're right. I don't know. But last time I checked, I was 40. I ain't 40 for long. Do you ever get nervous before these? Sometimes, but not today. So let me tell y'all why I'm not nervous today. Number one reason I'm not nervous today is it's all of us against the Surgeon General. It's like, let's see. It's like 12,000 v1. Easy. Dude, we have the might of the internet. We're good. We got this, chat. We got this. Like, I'm going to have Twitch chat open, right? If I misplay, like, y'all are going to, like, help me out. It's like Twitch plays Pokemon, except Twitch talks to the Surgeon General. We got this. Easy. I'm simply the mouthpiece. But it's like, y'all remember this game, like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, this game show where you, like, ask the audience? It's like, I can use that lifeline as much as I want to. I can ask the audience constantly. It's easy. Can't lose. The other thing is, we're here to listen. So I don't have to do anything. So y'all get this? So, like, sometimes maybe I'm nervous because I have to, like, teach stuff. And in May, we did, like, 2 of our biggest deep dives. And I think, in my opinion, one of my top 5 teaching experiences, like, in terms of what I've done. So I take pride very rarely in what we do on stream. But I think the trauma lecture was, like, really good. You know, I think it's not tooting my own horn. It's just, there are rare times when the stars align and I give it 100% and I get a lot out of it. But the cool thing is that I don't have to teach today. I just have to listen, which is really easy. Listening I can do. Like, I'm basically a chatter. Like, I'm like a VTuber. Like, I'm just a VTuber hanging out and I'm just going to be asking questions and I don't have to do anything. I just have to ask. The dude is bringing the knowledge. Like, he's going to be dropping the knowledge bombs. Right? That's what Dr. Murthy says. So what do I have to be nervous about? I don't have to teach anything. I'm basically like, I'm a digitally generated AI that's built off of Twitch. That's what I am. You should be nervous. He should be nervous. So, if he's not nervous now, he will be at the end of the conversation for future things. So, chat, here's the other thing. We have to be nice, okay? We got to be nice. Because this is important. That, like, this is what's so cool about this, is that people like him and people like us used to be separate. It's, like, really cool that we're talking. Right? This is awesome. This is what the world needs, is, like, we can't be separate anymore. We have to restore. So here's the thing. I imagine this person will be, like, making decisions at some point that will greatly impact the course of the internet. And so we need to show him that the internet can be a force for good. Right? Like, am I wrong? So here's the crazy thing. Y'all have power here. So that's the other reason. Like, if y'all are nervous around someone, oftentimes that nervousness comes from a perception that this person is, like, better or greater or more important than I am. And I am not worth that. But each and every one of you has immense value that you bring to the table. You have a very unique perspective. You have a unique circumstances. Each of y'all has a unique set of stats, has a unique spawn point, has done a unique set of side quests and main quests, and you are your own person. And you can offer something to the world that literally no other human being on the planet who has ever been alive or will ever be alive can offer. Seriously. You can connect the dots in a way that no one else can. And that's just what you have to offer. So what is there to be nervous about? You offer what you have. So people will also ask me, like, so people think I'm an extrovert. I'm not an extrovert. I'm sort of okay at public speaking and stuff. And, like, how did I overcome my nervousness and shyness to become a good public speaker? There's one really simple trick to avoid nervousness. Nervousness comes from the ego, usually. Oh my God, what will people think? I am thinking about what they think about me. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking about me. That's the focus. If you want to get rid of nervousness, think about the other person. So what can I do to help this person? What can I do to support this person? And even when I'm giving a talk, it's about recognizing you can give a school presentation, doesn't matter. Like audience of 1, audience of 50, whatever, audience of 600, audience of 12,000, like whatever. And the one thing that you can do is just think about, okay, I'm here and like I'm here to share something with these people. I'm going to do the best that I can to share this thing to enrich their lives. It's not about what they think about me. It's I'm here for them instead of them judging me. And the more that you think about that, hey, I'm here for a reason, and that's to actually like serve other people, the better off you'll be. Surgeon General's not late. He's on time. He's just coming in about 50 minutes. I'm not in the US. Is this guy a big deal? Yes, is the short answer. He's Gandalf. That's correct, Night Vision. He's basically the Gandalf of the healthcare profession. That's actually a fantastic analogy. He's like IRL Gandalf. IRL Dr. Gandalf. Is he white or gray? Y'all will determine at the end. Yeah, so who is the Surgeon General and what does he do? What a great question, King Krish. Thank you so much. And thank you all very much for our long-term chatters who have been here and are guiding us. I really do rely on y'all's support for these kinds of things. So what a great question. Who is the Surgeon General and what does he do? So the Surgeon General of the United States is, I think, basically a doctor who governs health, like the health of the nation. So if you kind of think about like your doctor is responsible for your health and responsible for the health of his patients. So the Surgeon General of the United States, his patients are like every human being in the United States. And even on some level, potentially even human beings outside of the United States. So he is like responsible. He's the one dude that's responsible for the health of the nation. So when you have a country that is struggling with health problems, sometimes one doctor who is working with one patient cannot solve those problems. So for example, if your doctor is treating you for emphysema or COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, from smoking too much, your doctor can try to help you quit smoking on an individual level, can give you medications, can do motivational interviewing, can help you quit smoking. But the fact that smoking advertisements are inducing young children to smoke and that it's being like portrayed very positively in the media, and there are all kinds of things that neither you nor your doctor can do anything about that affect your health. Who fixes those problems? That's what the Surgeon General does. So looks at the global societal things that impact people's health and can work at a scale that will affect hundreds of millions of people that you or your doctor may not be able to, that your doctor won't be able to affect. And so if you kind of think about, there's all kinds of really interesting stuff. So if you think about how healthy you are, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that we think that our health is determined by our behavior. People choose to be healthy or choose to be unhealthy. And there's a lot of judgment around this, right? So if someone, for example, is like overweight or obese, we'll judge that person for making particular choices, right? Oh, you could eat healthy. But what we don't realize is that there's all kinds of stuff that impacts your health that you have no idea about. So I saw an article recently that noise pollution affects cognitive development. So your ability to even regulate your impulses and resist the lures of video games is in some small part dictated by how noisy of an environment you grew up in. How close were you to a highway or freeway? Did you live close to train tracks? So things like pollution, noise pollution, all this stuff will affect your health. Did you grow up in an environment where people were using substances? Did you grow up in an environment where you were close enough to a grocery store so that you could get fresh, affordable fruits and vegetables? And this is what's super wild is people are like, okay, like you should eat healthy. But we don't really understand, we don't appreciate that your food choices are influenced by your gut bacteria. Your gut bacteria is influenced by your diet growing up. It's wild. So literally what happens is if you have had an unhealthy diet growing up and you try to eat healthy, you can do it for a day or two. But why does it get hard to stick with a diet on day 3, day 4, day 5? There are some studies that show that when you start eating healthy, the bacteria that depend on the unhealthy foods for survival start to die. So it's like I have Twinkie eating or cookie eating bacteria, and now I start eating broccoli. And when I start eating broccoli, not all bacteria can actually digest that. So they start to starve. And what do they do when they start to starve? They create inflammation. They start to release chemical signals that travel all the way up to your brain and start to have you crave food. So the cravings intensify at like day 3 or day 4. And whether you have those bacteria or don't have those bacteria are determined by what you ate on a daily basis when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That's what determines your gut bacteria. So gut bacteria will create neurotransmitter precursors, which is why diet is such a big part of mental health, because they give you the building blocks for things like serotonin. And so what we have is we have a profession of people who prescribe SSRIs and boost serotonin signals in the brain. I'm part of that profession. They're very useful medications and can be very, very helpful. And at the same time, what I've seen is that when people improve their diet and improve other aspects of their life, their dosage of SSRI can usually go down. And so there's a lot of stuff about food, pollution, internet hygiene. It's kind of wild, right? So if you want to start eating healthy, you have to understand that there's going to be a period of time where between days, I would say 4 and 14, those are the hardest days to build a healthy diet. If you can get through to day 14, something magical happens. At that point, you have fed a particular set of bacteria, and they will start to outcompete. There's a war between broccoli eaters and cookie eaters in your gut. And that's like really bad, causes inflammation and all this kind of stuff. But if you can get it to day 14, now the broccoli eaters have survived. And then you start to hear something really weird, which is people who eat healthy on a regular basis, they have the subjective experience of eating healthy is not hard. I feel good. I now gravitate towards healthy foods. And some of us are like, wait, how on earth does that work? Because it's a struggle for me every single day. It's because now the broccoli eaters in your belly are like, hey, this is great. Like, let's have some more broccoli. I need some broccoli. I'm craving broccoli. And it's like, hold on a second. I can do something that will make me crave broccoli instead of Twinkies? That is possible, and it doesn't involve willpower. It involves harnessing your gut bacteria for behavioral change. Wild. Going back to what the Surgeon General does. So he takes care of things like this. I don't know if he's going to do something specific around gut bacteria. That would be super hype. But he's the dude that acknowledges that, hey, your mental health is influenced by things that are outside of your control. And if we want to take care of you, we as a nation need to control that stuff at the top. We need to make it harder for 5-year-olds to smoke or do drugs. We need to be careful about the harmful effects of things like social media. And this, by the way, is actually super cool. I want to show you all something real quick. Let's do this. This is actually really neat. So one thing I like, this is the Surgeon General's advisory on social media and youth mental health. Let me show you all something. So this is hype. So to date, we started Healthy Gamer about 4 years ago. And when we started Healthy Gamer, it was kind of weird because there were a lot of experts on gaming addiction who were like, this is an addiction. And you have these places like these rehabs where they'll like unplug you from all video games and technology for like 30, 60, or 90 days to like, you know, it's kind of like sobriety, right? That's what we think. So you have to be sober from alcohol. You have to be sober from all these substances. That's the only way to develop a healthy relationship. But we did something different. We said, hey, we're going to create something called Healthy Gamer. It's not about quitting gaming. It's not about stopping gaming, which there are a lot of people for whom that's successful and that's their thing. But we had this core idea that technology is neither good nor bad. It is that our lack of control over technology or technology running rampant is what causes problems. It's a tool just like any other. And so we have a philosophy at Healthy Gamer to teach restraint instead of restriction. And what's really cool about this is that the Surgeon General's report actually talks about, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, like there's some people that are trying to ban social media. I think again, Michigan. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be regulated and maybe it doesn't need to be banned, like whatever. They have their reasons. I don't know exactly what their argument is, so we're not saying that they're necessarily wrong. But I think the really cool thing is that they're one of the first organizations to really acknowledge on the whole that these things have both positive and negative impacts. And this is like kind of in a day and age where a lot of people are like, no, like social media is amazing. Don't ever hurt it in any way and don't regulate it ever. Don't do anything. It's perfect the way it is. Here's another ad. And there are people who are like, oh my God, it's terrible. Like it should be banned. Like we've talked to a lot of parents who are like, social media should be banned. Like how do I get my kid to quit and never use it again? And if you're a parent who has a kid who you want to ban them from playing video games or using social media, we get it. Because chances are it is wrecking your life. It is wrecking your household. And most importantly, it is destroying your child's prospects of the future. But one of the things that I've seen as an addiction psychiatrist is oftentimes the people who do the worst with addictions are the ones who grow up in heavily controlled environments. So they grow up in environments where they're like nowhere near any substances ever. Their parents are very, very controlling. And then eventually the child becomes somewhat of an adult and enters the real world. And when they enter the real world, coin flip, sometimes they start using substances and they have no capacity for self-restraint because their environment has kept them from ever learning to be like resilient. And so now they've got like this thing and it's like they don't know how to resist it. And it makes them feel good. And there have never been conversations about it, right? It's just drugs are bad. Don't ever do drugs. They'll ruin your life. So it's this fear-based thing, but no one ever talks to them about, hey, this is why you do use. Here's why a lot of people choose to use. Here's what it does for them. Here's why it's harmful. We never have those kinds of conversations, or some parents don't have those kinds of conversations. It's just drugs are bad and people who use them are degenerates. And so these are kids that grow up with restriction instead of teaching them restraint. And then once they get some access to it, they can't control it. And so there are parents who are like, I want it completely out of my child's life. And I get you. But here are the couple of questions that you need to understand. First of all, what do you feel about this? How are you feeling emotionally when you try to cut games or social media out of your kid's life? Chances are you're feeling emotionally activated. And then I'm going to ask you as a parent, when do you make the best parenting decisions? When you're emotionally activated and really pissed off and really scared and really terrified for your child's future? Or when you are calm, level-headed, you can accurately assess things. You're able to listen to your kid. Which one leads to better parenting? So the first thing is emotionally decompress. And the second thing is to understand that your child is going to grow up in an environment where this stuff is just going to ramp up. And you can't protect them forever. What you need to do is teach them to protect themselves. And you don't teach a kid how to swim in the ocean by keeping them out of the kiddie pool. You teach them how to swim in the ocean by helping them learn how to swim. And so that's our approach here at HG. And what I really love about the Surgeon General's report is I think that they're one of the few organizations that really come out and say that. And I would bet money that that statement makes enemies on both sides of the table. Right? That's what's like super chat about it, TVH. What do y'all, so let me ask y'all a question. What do y'all think? So we have, this is kind of weird. I'm going to share some stats with y'all. So when we started streaming on Twitch, like the average age of like Twitch viewer was like 24. The average age of people is now like between 32 and 34. Gender split used to be like 95% dudes. Now we're like 80 to 70% dudes, 20 to 30% women. To the women and non-men in our community, welcome. We love to have you here. Yeah, can we get a poll real quick, mods? How old are you? So here's the other thing. We're also getting parents coming to us asking us for advice. And options, like let's do like under 18. Let's do 18 to 22. Let's do 22 to 26. Let's do 26 to 32. And let's do 32 to 45. Is that too many options? Let's see. See, this is what I'm saying, chat. This is wild. Well, under 18, like, I suspect our under 18 crowd could be at school. But that's really interesting, right? Did y'all know that 20% of chat is over the age of 33? And 20% of chat is like 18 to 22? Like, this is a pretty pog distribution. Yeah, so like, welcome everybody. This is cool. This is this makes me happy and proud. Are we Facebook? I don't think so. But this shows you that if you are over the age of 33, you don't have to hang out on Facebook. Right? You can come hang out here. But here's a legit question. So we get a lot of questions from parents, like 40 plus or 33 plus, whatever. And they'll ask us like, hey, I'm having trouble with my kid. What should I do? What do y'all think we should teach parents? Get wrecked 23 to 26. There are 27 more 27-year-olds. Isn't that funny? To be understanding, patience, empathy. Okay. Communication. So that's really interesting, right? So what I'm hearing is that y'all are not being heard or understood by your parents. To be more stable. Yeah. So what we try to focus on, so this is for all the parents out there. So your kids want you to listen, communicate, be empathic, try to understand them, and for you yourself to be more stable. Interpersonal skills, empathy. That's what your kids want. Really wild, right? Okay, let me just make sure. Okay, so we're going to hop in with the Surgeon General in about 30 minutes, okay? Explain why you're doing something as a parent. Okay, good to know. Ooh, This is rough. Take responsibility for their own mental health without making it their kid's problem. That's rough. So that's really challenging. If you're in that situation, it's tough. Schedules and regulations. Oh, this is great. Correct way to chastise a child. What's the right way to correct behavior? Parent anxiety becomes child's responsibility to soothe. This is some bad stuff, chat. Not gonna lie. Be predictable. Dr. K must be the best parent. I beg to differ. So here's a common misconception. Just because you're like a mental health expert does not make you a better parent by default. I've seen a lot of amazing parents who are better parents than I am, TPH, who have like no mental health training. I mean, I think I do okay, but I also have a lot of support, which is great. And I also have, like, generally speaking, good kids. So the other thing that we don't acknowledge for a lot of parents is that sometimes, like, kids are very hard to parent and they're not all the same. So I'll tell y'all something that's maybe a little bit judgmental, but it was just an authentic experience of mine. So when I was an intern at Massachusetts General Hospital, I was working on the inpatient psychiatry unit. And sometimes we would get like kids that were really, really messed up in some way, just like really struggled with emotion regulation, really were kind of like, in the worst cases, very manipulative and almost sociopathic. And like you see a kid who's like really, really messed up, you know, and we're here to help that kid. That kid deserves help. Absolutely. And then you wonder, like, what had to happen in this child's life that they ended up this way? Really important question to ask, because oftentimes what we do is just blame kids for misbehaving instead of understanding, why can't this kid play by the rules? Why can't they regulate their emotions? What happened in this child's life that makes it hard or even impossible for them to succeed in this environment? We just get pissed at them for not succeeding. And then I would meet the parents. And sometimes, I hate to say this, but I was judgmental, and I would meet the parents and I'd realize, oh, okay, like mom or dad is like a gigantic narcissist, like does not, you know, the child has been parentified and child is responsible for mom or dad's emotional needs or like all kinds of these other things. You begin to see, or mom and dad, and this was MGH, right? So this is like Harvard. And so it's like the best psychiatric hospital in the country or whatever, or second best or whatever, depends on the year. And so like a lot of like really successful people would come there. And like sometimes you see like the really successful people and you're like, oh, okay. So, you know, parent has very, very high standards for the kid, and like parent doesn't listen when the kid is like, I don't want to do this. And so then what happens is like parent and child get into this pissing contest where parent is like, you do this. And kid is like, no, I don't want to. Parent doesn't listen. Parent escalates with punishments, bribes, all kinds of stuff. Just do the behavior. I'll do whatever I can to do get the behavior. I'm going to reward you. I'm going to bribe you. I'm going to get you a $300,000 car. I'm going to send you off to wilderness camp because you're pissing me off. I'm going to send you to boarding school. They'll whip you into shape. I'm going to exert leverage on you because I want you to do this thing. And you're going to do this thing, whether you like it or not. And then kid basically has one card left to play, which is I'm sick. Because that's the only tool left in your tool belt. You can't outspend mom or dad. You can't outpunish mom or dad, but what you can do is get sick. Because if you're sick, then you don't have to perform. So sometimes I would see these kids and I'd meet their parents and I'd be like, oh, that's why they're that way. But the sad truth is that sometimes I'd meet the parents and no idea. These are the best parents in the universe. They're like caring, compassionate, they listen. And the kid is a little punk. Something is going on in the kid. And one of the things that we don't really acknowledge as parents or to parents is that some kids are harder to raise than others. Could be a front. I think we're pretty good at picking that up. Seriously. It's hard. What if the parents are faking lying? That's what everyone thinks, but we're pretty good at sussing that out. They're like nurses on the floor who have been like doing this for like 40 years, and they're good at telling the difference. And if you guys want to know, like, how do you tell the difference between a parent who BS's and a parent who's like pretty honest, is oftentimes the good parents will admit to mistakes that they make. Whereas like the narcissistic parents like think that they're doing everything right. So if someone is like, yeah, I messed this up. I could have done a better job here. I spent too much time at my work, and like they'll accept responsibility for their child's behavior to some extent. And it's hard, right? I wasn't an easy kid, to be fair. My parents were fantastic. They like loved me and did everything for me, and I was just addicted to video games. Was manipulative. Was dodging responsibility. Yeah, I was a bad boy. I was playing Super Mario 64 past midnight without my parents knowing. I'm a real punk. Yeah, like real rebel. Real handful. Really squeaking it. You know what my favorite thing is about this whole experience? Is that when we streamed 2 days ago, it was like we're streaming with Squeaks. And today, we're streaming with the Surgeon General of the United States. So I don't know if Squeaks was the appetizer and this is the main course, or Squeaks was the main course and the Surgeon General of the United States is the dessert. You know what's really hilarious is all three of us are Indian. So I imagine there are people. Okay, so now we explained to y'all who the Surgeon General of the United States is. We have to do right by them too. So there are people who watch the Surgeon General who are part of that world. Now we have the challenge, chat, of explaining to them, because they're hearing us. I want y'all to understand this. I'm pretty sure there are people from his office that are watching right now, and maybe he's going to watch the VOD. And I want y'all to just pay attention for a second and acknowledge what literally I am saying. Squeaks is the appetizer. That is not a sentence that makes sense in the English language. Right? So we have to explain to them what that means. So how does that... The government is watching. Yes. Pretty sure. And there's a tiny chance that we have said something that will result in a last minute cancellation, but fingers crossed that hasn't happened. What if President Biden watches? Then we say, hello, Mr. President. How are you today? Let me tell you who Squeaks is. So Squeaks is a streamer that we interviewed on Monday. Squeaks streams mostly Super Mario 64 and Mario Party. He used to be in investment banking and then found himself as a streamer, and is a surprisingly positive dude. Highly recommend it. Dr. K, have you heard of gentle parenting? It's popular on TikTok. Yes, I have. I've heard of gentle parenting. And I think it can be revolutionarily positive or incredibly toxic. So, this may sound crazy, but it's gentle. Dr. K, I've seen a lot of gentle parenting. So let's understand what gentle parenting is good for. Just my opinion, okay? I'm not like an expert parent or anything like that, but this is what I've seen. I've seen some gentle parenting that is very, very healthy for parents who were not parented gently. So if your parenting or your natural inclination is to be a very harsh disciplinarian, then I think gentle parenting can be really, really good. The downsides of gentle parenting. I think sometimes a big part of gentle parenting is to never lose your patience as a parent and to never be harsh or speak ill of your child or never yell at them, because yelling at your kids is harmful. So here's what I've also seen. When you raise kids in an environment where parents do not express anger as an emotion, should it be controlled? Absolutely. But when you don't express it, the kid gets really confused because you're going to be feeling angry. And then there's all kinds of weird like displacement going on where the kid like gets confused. The other thing that it's very important for kids to understand is that their behavior has negative consequences on the people around them. So I think the biggest mistake in gentle parenting, and this is a field as a whole, and maybe they talk about doing this and maybe some people aren't doing it right, who knows, is that when your kid grows up and like you never lose patience with them, how are they supposed to understand what's like right or wrong? From a visceral perspective, our emotional circuitry in responding to negative emotions is a very, very, very important thing to learn as a child. Oh, this pisses off mom and dad. Mom and dad actually have limits, and mom and dad are human beings. And then what something beautiful can happen when you as a parent actually are authentic with your kid. You can express anger, maybe you can even yell a little bit, and then you can do something awesome, which is apologize. Then you go to your kid and you say, hey, mom and dad got angry, mom or dad got angry, and we did something we were not supposed to, and how did that make you feel? It hurt your feelings. I am sorry. I am going to work on that. And I would bet money that that teaches your child a very valuable lesson. The basic thing that I think is missing from a lot of gentle parenting is modeling how to deal with your own negative emotions, because you're never supposed to express them. And sometimes you get this really weird displacement where no little Bobby or little Sally or little Dharti or little Ronak. No, I'm not punishing you. Mommy or daddy is not angry with you. This is a lesson that you need to learn. And until you learn it, we are going to continue not punishing you. It's not a punishment. It's a lesson. Aren't you learning? We need to learn it. It's all about learning. You need to articulate your feelings. Tell me how you feel. We're not going to say no, because no is a bad word. No is like, I think, the most utilized word by like 2-year-olds. Right? So there's a lot of weird stuff with gentle parenting where I think like sometimes parents themselves are not in a good place. And so they like lean into gentle parenting, right? They're like, oh my God, like I don't want to hurt my child the way that my parents hurt me. And the way that they hurt me is they were like not gentle with me. So I need to be really gentle. And so the pendulum swings the other way. And then if the parent is not gentle enough, they feel ashamed of themselves. And then like the whole thing is like, oh my God, like I'm becoming like my mom or dad. And like the cycle is repeating and that's terrible. And like, I feel terrible. I need to be gentler. I need to be gentler. I need to be gentler. But then the gentle parenting is coming from a place of like insecurity or panic. Whereas I personally, not an expert, by the way. It's not like I've had 1,000 kids besides y'all. I think the best thing to do is for you as a parent to heal if you've been traumatically like raised, and then listen to yourself. Because you can read as many books on gentle parenting as you want to, but I can guarantee you that no one who has written a book on gentle parenting has raised your child. I can guarantee you of that. And if there's one lesson I've learned as a parent, it's that, or as a psychiatrist, every child is unique. And there is not a strategy that works the best for all children. And that the best tool in your arsenal, if you are a parent, is your own mind, your own instinct. But that needs to be honed and operating really well. So you can't just trust your instincts. You need to be emotionally calm. You need to learn how to listen. You need to learn how to innovate. And by all means, read books on gentle parenting. Like, I think as a whole, it's probably pretty good. But I think any strategy mindlessly applied is not going to result in good outcomes, right? Oh my God, I was watching Arteezy stream, and Arteezy built 15 Battle Furies on Shadow Demon and carried a game, so that's what I'm going to do. Right? And so like you can look at what other people are doing, and they can say, like, you can watch some video by like BSJ or Jenkins or whatever about how to like gain MMR, but like this is a simple analogy, and hopefully parents understand this, maybe they don't. You can watch all those videos and learn all the good techniques, but if you just suck at the game, it's like not going to make a difference, or it'll help some. And so what I'm kind of saying is, like, you got to work on the fundamentals, like, of the game. You got to learn how to last hit. You got to learn how to watch the minimap. And in parenting, like, you have to like learn how to manage your own emotions, right? And you have to really think about, okay, like, what are my instincts? Pay attention to your kid. That's like watching the minimap. Like, you have to understand like what's happening in the game. And they have to focus on last hit, your core fundamentals, which is like how to speak and how to listen. And then you'll be a good parent. The really cool thing about being a parent is that you actually have your kid on your team if you play your cards right. Like, your kid will be on your team, and then it becomes way easier. A boy named Nick is saying my parents could not see us. That's rough, dude. The Surgeon General just asked for a translator. That's what you're here for, chat. But yeah. I mean, sometimes muting your dad is a good idea. That's the honest truth. As if there's a dishonest truth. Okay, but for real, what do y'all want us? So we've got about 10 minutes, and we may just do a quick tech check in a second. Okay, so we've got one thing that we want to know is, what do y'all want us to cover? So just as HG at a whole, like, what are the big, so if I was going to do, let's say 3-hour-long lectures, they don't have to be like in sequence. Like, you guys want to deep dive into what? What is my opinion of the carnivore diet? It doesn't sound healthy to me, but I have not looked at any randomized controlled trials or epidemiologic studies on the carnivore diet. Okay, eating disorders, alcoholism, autism, parenting, squeaks, bipolar 2, avoidant personality disorder, loneliness, trauma. We did trauma. Or y'all want more trauma? Fibromyalgia. Okay, I'm gonna, do we have mod check? Checking the mods? Do we have moderator? Okay, Surgeon General's coming on in 10 minutes, chat, so I got to do a tech check and make sure that everything works okay. Outside factors on depression. Okay, this is good stuff, but I need a pen. So you guys want AVPD. You mentioned eating disorders. Can we relationships, parenting? Dude, for those of y'all asking for BPD, have y'all seen our 2 BPD videos? Okay, let's do... I'm going to toss in psychosomatic illness. Okay. Suicide. Autism. Alpha male stuff. I don't know what that means exactly, but okay. Last hitting tutorial. Well, we have time, chat. Who knows how many years we're going to be doing this? I saw recently that we have 899 videos uploaded. Can y'all believe that? We've streamed like, God, hundreds, thousands of times, probably hundreds of streams. Okay, so why don't y'all do a quick poll? What I'm going to do is actually... I'm going to do be right back. Okay, so we're going to switch over and just make sure everything's working for our interview in about 10 minutes. But y'all may be able to hear me, okay? Or I guess y'all can just see me. Can we do a poll on topics? Derealization. Did y'all watch the trauma thing? Okay, maybe I can... Okay, pills. I like pills. Okay. Dealing with modern day prejudice. Interesting. How interesting. Okay, we're going to do this. And I'm going to put these on, but y'all aren't going to be able to hear because we may not be ready for this yet. Okay. So we are... okay. Trying to join for final tech check. Okay. The other thing that has to happen is we got to... so light. Let's do that. So we're going to wait, chat, for this. Okay. There we go. Okay. I think we're good. Alrighty. Okay. Mods? Can we do poll? Poll chat? That means that he is both a surgeon and a general. He leads all of the surgeons into combat. Mod sleeping. Mods, this is the wrong time to be asleep, yo. We need mods. We have the nation's most important doctor coming on Twitch and mods are asleep? Really? How Twitch can we get, chat? How Twitch can we get? Let them sleep. Okay, so y'all actually win the prize for the kindest community in existence. Because y'all are behaving yourselves and we're being really nice to the mods. and we're letting them sleep. Great job. Look at how wholesome everybody is. Self-moderation, absolutely, chat. What were the topics again? So AVPD, eating disorders, relationships, parenting. I'm going to go ahead and toss out psychosomatic illness because I heard a lot of stuff about fibromyalgia, suicide, autism, alpha male stuff, and pills. I wonder if we can do one of those, whatchamacalls, like one of those brackets, you know? Tournament style, and we can get stuff to the top. Oh my God. Okay, ADHD and pills. Okay, so we're gonna have to do like more of a like a Thunderdome of deep dive topics. Yeah, I think you can only have 5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 topics. Okay, yeah, no, I think that's good. PMDD. Add that to the list. Loneliness. Oh. Okay. I will, let me type over here. All right. It is happening, chat. I was about to say that someone is doing something, but then I realized we're on Twitch and y'all would misinterpret that. So the call is about to begin. Now my hands are sweating. Oh my God. Dr. K's Guide to Eating Healthier. Yeah, so, we could do something like a guide, but I feel like, so here's the basic problem that we're running into here at HG. We can make guides about stuff. We can make streams about stuff. We can make videos about stuff. But the real question is, how do we get y'all to, do it? That's the question. So we can educate y'all, but, I'm not sold on just making more guides. Does that make sense? We need some way to help y'all be accountable and actually make change. That's why I like so mindful mayhem is a great example of stuff that I think really works. We hear so much good stuff. Okay, we're going. Alrighty. Hello. No one can hear you yet, and no one can see you yet. Okay, wait. So people can't hear or see you yet. Okay, let me just make sure that we're pinned and nothing is going to get... Can you say something? Hi. So just count to 10 for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Perfect.
6, 7, 8, 9,
Can we
10.
go live? Are we good?
Am I supposed to be able to see you, Elo? Because I can't see you.
Oh, well, let's do that.
And I also just wanted to make sure you were aware we do have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. So just wanted to flag that for you.
Okay, I will. Yeah, we're good. Can you hear me now? Or see me now?
I got you. I'm good.
Awesome. Welcome to Twitch. And thank you for being here. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about, how you like to be addressed And
You can call me Vivek. Call me by my first name. That's
okay,
fine.
and you can call me Alok if you would like to.
Sure.
So welcome, Vivek. And I understand that you're Surgeon General of the United States.
That's right.
What's that like?
It's an incredible privilege to be able to serve, and it's different every day. As people often ask me, what's a typical day in the life? And it's quite different. Some days I'm traveling to communities across the country, working with people on some of our priority issues, whether that's mental health or other issues that they're concerned about. Other days, I'm here working with a lot of our strategic partners in Washington, D.C., both in and outside of government. And we're always building in new initiatives and launching new products. Most recently, we launched an initiative around addressing loneliness and isolation, which are profound challenges for the country, as well as some broader topics related to mental health, including social media use. So it's an incredible job and an experience, and at least something happens once a day. I would say at least once a day that reminds me of how just what a blessing it is to be able to serve in this capacity. So
Awesome, man. So can you just tell us a little bit? So I know y'all have released 3 advisories in like rapid pacing. So one on youth mental health, one on isolation and loneliness, and one on social media. Can you tell us like what's going on with like mental health in this country today?
yeah, so we have released a number of advisories related to youth mental health and mental health, I'd say more broadly. And the reason we've done that is because in COVID-19, the pandemic we've come through, this has really put a real strain on people's mental health and well-being, and we're seeing it in the numbers in terms of anxiety and depression. But we also know that even before the pandemic, long before COVID-19 arrived, there was a mental health crisis in America. We take kids, for example. In the decade prior to the pandemic, there was a 57% increase in the suicide rate among young people. And we had seen also in the decade prior to the pandemic that more and more high school students were saying that they felt persistently sad or hopeless. And that number now stands close to half. And so we knew that there was a problem beforehand. And sadly, the pandemic poured fuel on that fire. But the reason that I've made this a priority and why we have worked on mental health from so many different angles is because I really believe that mental health is a fuel that allows us to show up in our lives, at work, at school, for our families, for our communities. And many of us know this actually intuitively. Like if you think about a day when you were struggling with your mental health or a period that you went through when you were having a tough time with your mental health, most people know that that was a time where sometimes it was harder to really focus on work or to do work, or maybe you didn't do as well in school, or you weren't able to just be present with your friends, or with your family members as much as you normally would. Maybe you tended to volunteer less or engage less in your community. Our mental health is really what impacts how we show up in the world. And so addressing mental health to me is really key to addressing not just the health of individuals, but the health of society more broadly.
Wow. Okay. And what do you think we can do about that? Like, what should social media is all over the place. Like, how do we handle this? Because we're growing up in this environment, right?
Well, we are. And one thing I think to realize is that as big as a challenge as mental health is, there are actually a lot of things we can do as individuals to help not only ourselves, but other people with their mental health and well-being. And this is in addition, of course, to all of the policy actions that we have to take and the programmatic, changes that we can take on, which will help make mental health care more available to people. That will help invest in prevention. That will help to ensure that we're using technology in particular to bring care to where people are, as opposed to waiting for them to drive 30 miles and wait 3 months to get an appointment. So there's a lot that we have to do in terms of programs and policies to make care more available and address the root causes of mental illness. But as individuals, it turns out there's a lot we can do too. So like number one, we know that strengthening social connection in our life helps with mental health. When people struggle with loneliness and isolation, it actually increases their risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide. So think about this for a moment. Like each of us, most of us are living busy lives, right? And a lot of times what gets edged out in those busy lives are people, right? So, but if we can take 15 minutes a day to reach out to people we care about, if we can make sure that when we're talking to friends, catching up with family members, that we're actually fully present during our conversations, that we're not distracted by devices, these are simple ways that we can actually start to strengthen our relationships again. The second thing that we can do is we can be mindful of our use of technology. recognizing that technology, in the end of the day, it can be a blessing or a curse. It can help, it can hurt. It depends how it's designed and how we use it. And what has happened in the last, couple of decades is that technology has really taken over so many elements of our life. We get up, first thing we do so many times is look at our devices, and it's the last thing we see before we go to bed at night. But it's also invaded our space for conversation. It's taken the time that we perhaps had when we were just thinking or reflecting or reading a book, and perhaps eliminated that time. So one of the things we can do when it comes to technology is we can draw boundaries around our use of technology and say, okay, there's certain times in my day where I'm going to actually create a tech-free zone, right? And that could be the time right before you go to bed and throughout the night, because protecting sleep is vital for your mental health and well-being. And we know that when kids in particular, a third of adolescents say they're staying up till midnight or later on weekdays on using their devices, and that use is predominantly social media. So we can draw those kind of zones. Another zone actually would be around meal times when we're with other people, so we can just focus on them. And another time would actually be physical activity. When we're out, working out, or, playing a game of pickup soccer or basketball, or doing whatever it is that gives us sort of the chance to be physically active, making sure that's also a space where we don't have, we're not sort of constantly distracted by our devices, can be helpful too. So there's a lot we can do as individuals. But the last thing I'll mention, which is perhaps one of the most important, is we can make sure that we're checking on one another throughout our days. And it turns out that there are a lot of people who are walking around today who feel invisible, who feel alone, who, even though they're surrounded by lots of people, they just feel like there's no one who really cares about them per se, that people are busy with their own lives and that they've become increasingly invisible. And sometimes simply by checking on a coworker or a classmate, or reaching out to a friend, not for a particular reason or because you need something, but just to say, hey, I'm thinking of you, want to see how you're doing. That can make all the difference in the world, especially at a time where so many people are feeling invisible and like they don't belong.
Yeah, so that sounds great. Can I challenge some of that a little bit?
Sure.
So the stuff that you're saying sounds weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like you just pick, like, how does that like you say, talk to someone for 15 minutes a day, leave your house and go pick up soccer or pick up basketball. And this sounds kind of like a weird question, but isn't that weird? How do you actually do that?
So I'm glad you asked. So it turns out that it may feel a bit weird because we've become less accustomed to doing these things, like in recent years. But the truth is, this is actually what we have done for generations. And this is actually how we've evolved as human beings over thousands of years, is to have face-to-face interactions with one another, to have some frequency of interaction. Now, talking to someone for 15 minutes a day, this doesn't have to be hard. You could think about a friend who you haven't talked to in a while, or a friend you've talked to often. You can think about a family member. You can think about a coworker who you could catch up with maybe over lunch, or just have a conversation with at the beginning or end of the day. They're people who are actually pretty close to us. They're proximate in our lives. And sometimes it's literally just a simple phone call, or a text to them to say, hey, I'm thinking of you, want to know how you're doing. That can build a bridge that will feel a lot easier once you've done it. Whereas before, I know sometimes it can feel like the activation energy to reach out can be pretty high. But the one other interesting thing I'll tell you is that if you're thinking, gosh, this feels unusual to like reach out and talk to someone for 15 minutes a day, you're not the only one who feels that way. The person you're reaching out to may also be inhibited about reaching out to other people and may not do it. But here's the interesting thing I'll tell you is the vast majority of the time when you reach out, people welcome it. It may be unusual, but that actually makes it all the more welcome. I'll give you a simple example. I don't know when the last time was, Alok, that maybe you wrote a letter to somebody, like a physical letter, and mailed it to them. But it doesn't happen very often anymore, right? Because we just write emails, or we send a text message, or we communicate in some other way. But whenever you do receive a message, like think about the last time you received a letter, like from a friend.
This is epic. Yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
it actually, you're like, wow, this is so unusual. This is so interesting. Like it makes it even more special that you're receiving that. And I just recently received a letter from a friend, and I don't get letters very often anymore. But it was like incredible just to like see the time someone had actually taken time to write something to me, a good friend, and it meant like even more to me than it would have like 20 years ago. All that just to say that when you reach out to other people, even though it might feel a little weird or unusual, if you're not used to doing that, just know that you will almost always feel better having done it. And the person you reached out to will feel better too, even more so because it's become a more unusual thing for people to do, in modern life.
But if I write someone a letter, aren't they going to think I'm weird? Like, isn't that a weird thing to do?
Well, you don't have to write them a letter. You can call them if you want, but if you did choose to write them a letter, they would probably think it's very unusual. But I don't know that they would necessarily. But they would. My guess, from my own experience, is that they would probably be touched that, hey, you thought enough of them to actually write them a letter.
So I think
yeah.
you're doing something super cool here, which I think is subtle. So I asked you, do you think it's weird? And you said it's probably unusual. And I think even the way that you're talking about it is really interesting because my word choice is loaded with judgment, which I think is actually a huge part of what people nowadays struggle with. They're like, if I just pick up the phone and call, I was thinking about you, that can seem creepy. Like, hello, Vivek, I've been thinking about you,
So yeah, it's an interesting point. I think it's really in how you phrase it. But the difference to me between unusual and weird is exactly what you said. It's judgment. But the thing is, when something is unusual, that can actually make it feel more special, right? So like when I interestingly talk to people out there who have struggled with loneliness, as by the way, a lot of people do. 1 in 2 adults in America report measurable levels of loneliness, and it's even higher among young people. But when I talk to folks who have received that kind of outreach, the unexpected call from a friend or unexpected message from a family member, even when a lot of times they're surprised, but they're grateful. It's like if you walk around feeling like, you know what, no one seems to really care about me. Like if I disappeared tomorrow, no one would even like notice. And then someone actually does notice you and they say, hey, you popped in my head the other day. I was just wondering how you're doing. I wanted to check on you. You're like, wow, like I actually matter to somebody. Somebody cared enough about me to reach out. So what I want people to know is that at a time where so many people are struggling with their own self-worth, with a sense of loneliness, sometimes that very simple outreach from you can have a powerful impact on them. And sometimes we may not realize it because it just seems like, oh, I'm just making a phone call to them or writing them a message. But it can be a lifeline to people who otherwise are feeling isolated.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. And I think it's fascinating how the way you use language, I think that's what's missing. Because anytime we think about doing something, we attach some kind of judgment to our own actions. We think it's weird. Whereas you're acknowledging it's not commonplace, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And I think a lot of times people in our community and on the internet, we will negotiate against ourselves and think about the worst version of this, right? Like what people will think I'm weird, but I think it's spot on. I think one way to kind of think about it is if someone did this and reached out to you and was like, hey, just wondering how you're doing, I think people in our community acknowledge that feels good. One other thing, if we can bump up the difficulty a little bit. So if someone reaches out to you, I think it's reached a point where we don't really know how to respond to those open-ended, authentic desires for connection, as opposed to, hey, do you want to grab food sometime? Or, do you want to queue up for a video game? How do you respond if someone like writes you a letter or calls you or DMs you without an ulterior motive?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Because you're right, there's this whole dialogue that goes on in our heads before we think about how to respond, right? We're thinking, one, what am I really feeling? Do I want to share it with them? What will they think about me if I share it with them? Will they tell somebody else if I share it with them? Like how will I feel about myself if I'm really open with, like, there are all of these dialogues that are going on in our head before we even utter a word in response. And sometimes that can become complicated and confusing. And it can ultimately sometimes result in us saying nothing and just moving past the message and saying, I'll just respond later, right? Here's what I try to do. And I've actually, the reason I know this in part is because I've actually felt it myself. I've been one of those people who's gotten sometimes those outreaches over the years and unsure what to say. I just say, I'll respond later. And then days go by and I never respond. Right. And that's not ideal. So what I've defaulted to is just a way to really simplify it, which is, it might sound a little scary, but it's actually to me, the simplest thing to do. And it helps me actually respond quickly, which is 2 words, just to be real. That's it. Right. So in those moments, I'm trying to think, well, what will they think? Well, how they perceive me, etc. I just say, you know what? Let me just be real here. Let me just be honest about what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, like what I'm thinking right now. And the first time, few times I did that, I braced myself. I was like, well, how are they going to respond? Are they going to think I'm weird? Are they not going to respond? Which would be perhaps even the worst, because then they maybe think I'm terribly weird, so much so that they couldn't write back. But I'll tell you this, every time I've realized, almost every time when we're real with somebody else, what we're doing is we're not just giving ourselves a chance to be authentic, which, by the way, feels good in the long term, but we're actually telling the other person, hey, it's okay for you to be real too. Because a lot of times that's what people want, right? If you think about some of the best conversations that we've had in our lives, right? They're usually conversations where we didn't have to pretend to be someone else. We didn't have to put on airs. We didn't have to put on fronts, right? We could just like literally be real, be ourselves, and not worry the other person was going to judge us for it. And we're in one of those moments where we have all built so many layers around us. We've become professional mask wearers. You know, we walk around with these masks that are shaped by what we think society wants, what we think other people want us to be. But underneath all that is us, right? And this is a time to actually slowly peel that stuff back and say, you know what? I'm just going to be real. Let the chips fall where they may. But I'll tell you, almost always they fall in a place where people are grateful for the authenticity and encourages them to be open as well.
Yeah, I loved as you were sort of articulating that internal dialogue. It sounds like you're one of us underneath everything, which is awesome. And chat, by the way, is loving everything you're saying, and I think it's impactful in a different way, because I think when we think about you, we think about like this is not a regular human being. This is the Surgeon General of the United States. And to
Yeah, I
hear
can
that,
understand that. And I'll tell you one other thing I looked at. You know, I'm an introvert. You know, some of the folks on here may be introverts as well, but I'm also a shy introvert, right? So like growing up, let me tell you, that was particularly tough because, you know, there were times I wanted to like make friends, hang out, you know, play ball with other kids, etc. But I had a hard time sort of figuring out how to start a conversation or kind of get going. I was always worried people are going to maybe think poorly of me or judge me, or I'd say the wrong thing. And so I would think a lot, you know, internally before I said anything, and would overthink things a lot. And I'll tell you, it was really exhausting. It was really exhausting. And it led to a lonely experience because I wasn't reaching out and making the kind of friendships that I really wanted to make. And it took me a long time to kind of get over that, to realize that what felt like a really risky move, which is just being myself and just saying what was on my mind, um, that actually turned out was the better path. You know, it felt scary initially, but it felt so much better, like in the long term. And it actually helped me actually reach out and connect to other people. And then I would realize that they were feeling the same way. In fact, years after I was in grade school, I reconnected with a bunch of friends from there. And they all told me something very interesting, because I was looking at their lives when I was in school thinking, wow, these guys seem to have it all together. They seem to be hanging out with other people. They're having a great time. I'm the only one who's like sort of shy and introverted and having a hard time connecting. But they all told me to a T. They're like, you know, we felt the same way too, that we were having a hard time connecting. We felt weird. We felt isolated and awkward. And I was like, God, I had no idea that these other people were feeling the same way. So the bottom line is like, if you're out there feeling like sometimes it's hard to connect, or feeling like you're having a whole internal dialogue that's like paralyzing you from acting and reaching out to other people, just no, you're not alone. There are a lot of people who are struggling with this, but this is like the power of moments where we can be real, is that we can break that cycle. We can short circuit those thoughts that are like, you know, cycling through our head. And we can have a genuine human interaction. And I'll just tell you, that's an act of courage. And acts of courage give other people the courage to act as well.
yeah, that's so fascinating. Can I ask you more about this?
Yeah.
So I totally get that long term, right? You've learned the lesson that reaching out can be initially scary, but that over time you form connections with people. It's great, fantastic. But in that initial stuff, you said it took you a long time. And that's where I imagine actually most of our audience is now. They're not in the later stages. They're in the, oh my God, this is terrifying.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your like almost like minute process when you were working on this? Like what could you do to actually make it easier on yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple of things I'd say. One is the time that it was hardest for me was in building up to actually reaching out. But the time where it started to feel better was about probably 15 to 20 seconds into like their response. Because I realized after that I had opened the door and that someone else was walking through it. That it wasn't just like I opened it and there was no one there, or people ran the other way. That only took 15 or 20 seconds, right? Because you're putting something out and then you're waiting for a response. But a couple of things that I found to be helpful, and this is actually some interesting research behind this as well, which is that if you picture, if you assume that the other person is going to have a positive response to you, that actually changes how you show up in the conversation. So if you and I are meeting for the first time, Alok, and we just did a few minutes ago, and if I assume that Alok is going to like me, right, then that actually turns out makes me warmer in my interactions toward you. And that warmth is perceived by the other person and increases the likelihood that they will like me. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so there's some interesting research behind that. But so one of the things I try to do is if I'm feeling nervous about an interaction, right, whether it's an interaction at work or with with somebody socially or whatever it might be, I just sort of pause for a minute to take a deep breath and then picture them enjoying my company, and liking our conversation. And it turns out that changes how I behave. The other thing that I try to remind myself of when I do feel some trepidation about reaching out is I try to remember my history. I try to remember the instances where I did actually reach out, right? Even when it felt weird or felt awkward. And I try to remember how that felt, right? So speaking of unusual, practices, I'll tell you about something that I did in medical school, which was unusual. So I mentioned I was shy and introverted growing up. That was throughout grade school, it was throughout college, and it was into like the beginning of medical school. But I was starting med school, I remember, and I was 100 classmates, right? All people I'd never met before. I was like excited to be a part of the community, but I was like, I'm not like typically the kind of person who like goes to big raging parties and like meets people there and like, and goes to clubs and like makes, best friends. Like that just doesn't feel like the right, comfortable environment for me. I was more comfortable with like one-on-one or small group conversations. So here's what I decided to do. I said, I'm going to use my time that I have for lunch and dinner when a lot of us are in the cafeteria together. I'm just going to ask somebody who I'm interested in if they want to have lunch. And I'm just have like a one-on-one conversation with them over lunch. Now, if you think about it, like that can seem like a bit of a unusual or scary thing to do, right? Like, everyone's like hanging out in the cafeteria and you're asking somebody to like, just get together and have lunch one-on-one. And I would do it like, very simply, like after a lecture or something, if I was sitting next to somebody and I actually was having a little convo or I thought, hey, there's an interesting person, I'd love to chat with them. I'd just say, hey, I'm going to be having lunch in the cafeteria later today or tomorrow. Like, do you want to get a bite together? I'd love to chat. And almost, in fact, I can't think of an instance where someone said no. But here's the interesting thing I try to remember. Those conversations were some of the best conversations I had in my 5 years in graduate school. I made friends through those conversations because the doors open, we got to know each other. Friends who have like remained dear friends to this day. And even though it seemed like an unusual thing, a couple months into that, I started getting complaints from people who said, how come you haven't asked me yet, to come and have lunch or dinner one-on-one? When is my turn? And it was one of those moments when I realized that I wasn't the only one craving connection. There were a lot of other people craving it as well, but I was blind to that. So I try to remember my past also and think, like, even though sometimes I might feel scared to reach out, the moments where I've been courageous enough to do it in the past, it's led to amazing experiences and great friendships. And it reminds me that, hey, a lot of us are in this boat of wanting to connect more deeply.
So here's what I'm kind of hearing. So I think it's really interesting because I think there's a sophisticated process going on. So there's first of all, you align behind a central goal of being authentic, right? So once you have kind of like a sort of abstract goal, it kind of recruits different parts of your brain to move towards it. I think you also you're very careful with your phrasing because even the way that you reached out to people to lunch, I think is something that we're sort of losing in the day of like emojis, which is, hey, I'm going to grab lunch. Would you like me to join me? I'd love to chat. Like it's very low pressure, low stakes, opens the door for people. And I think sometimes people don't, know quite how to say that. So I think there's actually a lot of sophistication. And then the next thing is your attitude. So I think you actually do some interesting cognitive things about removing judgment from the equation, weird versus unusual. You really kind of look at things objectively. And then the last thing is that you actually do a really good job of post-processing, where you reflect back on things and you actually like really solidify your wins. And it's fascinating because even in 15 minutes, I mean, to hear you come from where you are to where you are today, I think there's a lot that people can learn about just like this process. It's really interesting. I'm kind of curious. Do you have any thoughts about parenting in today's age and how parents can prepare their kids or what they should be doing, not doing?
Oh, it's a good question. And it's one I think about a lot as a parent myself. I have a 5 and 6 year old. And, I realize they're growing up in a world that's totally different from the world in which I grew up. And there are times, I'll be honest, where I'm not always sure like how to manage, like the various experiences that they're going through that I never had to contend with. And technology is included among those. These days, about 70% of parents say that they believe parenting is harder now than it was 20 years ago. And the top two reasons they cite are technology and social media, because we didn't grow up, many of us, having to navigate a lot of this, and our parents didn't have to manage it for us either. But a few things that I would say to parents is that while there is a lot to navigate, I think we can never forget as parents that the most important thing we can give to our children is confidence that they are loved for who they are, not for what grades they achieve or what college they get into or what achievements they put on their resume, but that they are loved by us as parents for who they are. We know in the research that those kind of secure attachments are one of the most important determinants of a child's health, well-being, and success later in life. So that's number one. And there are going to be days where, as parents, we feel like we've failed at everything. But if you love your child and your child knows that you love them, then you have succeeded. The second thing I would say is that our kids learn a lot from watching us. When I became a dad, one of my good friends told me, he said, your kids may sometimes listen to what you say, but they'll more often listen to what you do. So they'll learn from you by example. That was certainly true for me with my parents. But that means that as parents, when we role model how to prioritize relationships in our life and how to put friends and family first, how to invest in people, our kids pick up on that, and that certainly was true, I know, for me growing up. I saw my parents not just talk about the importance of taking care of other people, but when somebody who was in our friend circle lost a loved one or a family member, my parents would go over. They would call. They wouldn't wait like a month or a year to do that. They would go over right away, and they would always tell me when someone is in need, that's when their friend should show up. Even actually this morning, funny, this happened. This coincidence has happened this morning. My mother called me this morning, and she said, so and so who you grew up with, their father actually just passed away today. Call them, and tell them that offer your condolences and make sure they're okay. So my parents continue to not only role model but speak it as well. But my point is parents, we can role model how to prioritize people, how to take care of ourselves, how to talk about topics like mental health. When we talk about this and open up a conversation with our kids, it tells them, hey, these are issues that are okay to talk about. But finally, we can role model how to use technology as well. Now, I say this knowing that as all of us struggle to some extent with our use of technology, how to draw the right boundaries around it, how to make sure that we're not allowing technology to distract us from our conversation. So this is hard, but even being honest with our kids about that, saying, hey, look, here's what I want to do, like with technology. I want to use it for this, but I don't want it to like distract me from my conversations with you. I don't want it to rob me of my sleep. I don't want it to take over so many hours in my day that I can't actually go to the gym and work out or can't spend time with you and the rest of the family. Even sharing those kind of goals, building what I think of as a family media plan, that can be very powerful for us to do as parents. The bottom line is, as parents, it's more important than ever for us to dialogue with our kids about some of these real challenges that we're all facing together, particularly how we use technology and social media, because none of us have all the answers to it. But one thing I learned as a doctor early on is that any type of lifestyle change you're trying to make, whether it's starting a new diet or starting a new gym routine, is much harder to do on your own compared to doing it together with other people. So when we can support each other in the family, have open conversations about this, we can move closer and closer toward healthy practices. So, the last thing I would just say for parents is this: look, don't think that you've got to overcome all the challenges of parenting alone by yourself, because this is too much for one parent to take on. One of the reasons I issued an advisory on youth mental health and social media is because I felt that the entire burden of managing this has been placed on the shoulders of parents, and that's not right. We need others to step in and make sure that platforms are safer for our kids. But it's also a time when parents reaching out to other parents to dialogue with them, to talk to them, to share some of their challenges and work together is more important than ever before, because parenting can be lonely. It can be an isolating experience, and it's a time where we need each other more than ever.
Yeah, great. So thank you so much for sharing all that. I think, like you said, sometimes we don't realize that parents themselves don't have great, healthy relationships with technology. They're modeling the wrong behavior. So I just want to actually close, if that's okay, with a moment of authenticity, not from me, but you've opened a door and you've agreed to speak with us. And I think you've really spoken from the heart. And if it's okay with you, I want to share just 2 or 3 comments. I just paused the chat at a random spot when you were talking. And so Powerful Ash Greninja says, who is this guy? He spits so much facts. X-Man X is saying Vivek is 10 steps ahead. Oink Pig Rock is saying, never knew the Surgeon General was such a cool, well-rounded guy. Love on Singed is saying, this is such an amazing topic. And Mittens, the Killer Bunny, said, I really dig him using personal examples. Helps kind of solidify the guidance. Just a random 5 comments that I've selected. I didn't like, I just paused. And I think you've opened the door, and like, this is our chance to like walk through it and say like, thank you for your guidance, your personal guidance, all the work that you do. And I'm genuinely surprised by how much people are resonating with like what you're saying. And I think you've made a big impact today. I know that's your day job, but we're incredibly grateful.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing those comments, Alok, and for inviting me to have this conversation as well with the community. I'll just say, in closing, that I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, for sure. But one of the things I think we're all learning as we go through life is trying to figure out what's truly going to bring us fulfillment and joy and happiness. And I will say that in the last 45 years that I've been on this earth, through all the successes and failures and doing it right and wrong, the one thing that I have learned from the patients I've taken care of, who at their end of their life have, privileged me with the opportunity for me to listen to like what they reflect on in those final moments, is I've learned that it's really our relationships with one another that are our greatest source of fulfillment and joy. And, people at the end of their life, they're not talking about how many followers they had on social media. They're not talking about how much money they had in their bank account, how big their corner office was, how many bedrooms and bathrooms their house had. What they're talking about are the people that they loved, the people who brought joy to their life, the people they wish they had spent more time with. And the truth is, none of us have to wait till the end of our lives to learn that lesson. And so what I'm trying to do in my own life, and what I hope all of you can do in yours, is to find ways to put people at the center of your life, not at the edges, not at the periphery, but at the center. And that means prioritizing people when it comes to decisions we make, where we spend our time and our effort and our energy. And those could be small interactions with coworkers or big interactions with family and friends. But the more we're able to put people first, the more we have a chance of living a life that's truly fulfilling and happy. And that's what I want for all of you. So thank you, Alok, for this time today. And
beautiful.
Very grateful.
Thank you so much. Spoken like someone who's never played a multiplayer game on the internet. Putting people at the center of our lives. Yeah. So thank you so much, Vivek, Dr. Murthy, the Surgeon General of the United States. And we'll stay tuned to, other advisories and stuff that y'all keep out. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Alok. Really enjoyed this.
Me too. Take care.
Okay,
bye. All right. So now we have, he's your Surgeon General, right? That's what I'm like. So I didn't know. I've heard the dude speak. Like, the dude is legit. Okay. But I didn't know he was like one of us, chat. That's my Surgeon General. That's what I'm saying, dude. Chat, like, legit AF. Y'all too. Like, do you guys realize how quickly this could have gotten tanked? If y'all were like misbehaving and stuff and trolling, like, the dude shows up, like, he's a busy dude, but like, he shows up and shares like, hey, by the way, like, y'all caught that self-dialoguing, right? The overthinking in his head. I was going to jump in. I was going to say, this sounds not like someone who's done research, but this sounds like someone who's lived through it. And what's really interesting is it's fascinating because in 5 minutes, he goes through those steps. So here's like Dr. K's interpretation of the Surgeon General's 4-step plan to 5-step plan to make friends in life. Number 1, be real. Now that's going to be hard to do, so we're going to get into more details, but really think about how much crap in your life and how much crap in your relationships is based on the 5D chess that you're playing with yourself. What will this person think? What should I say? What will they think then? What will they think then? What will they think then? You're sitting there, and instead of actually giving the other person an opportunity to tell you how they think, how they feel, you're like predicting it for them. So be real, number 1. That's what he showed us today, right? Like the dude was real. Number 2, work on your phrasing, I think a little bit, right? Like, so think about how you're going to speak, and you want to create an open door. That too is sort of like the goal that he's going for. He's not saying, how do I get someone to come in? Right? That's another mistake that we make. We try to think about, what do I say to get this person to say yes? That's not his goal. All he's doing is opening the door, and then they can walk in or not walk in. And you think about the times in your life where, no pressure, someone has like opened a door for you, and it's your choice whether you want to walk through it or not, but they've given you the option. They've empowered you. And when you empower the person on the other side of the table, they feel comfortable. And then you're also not manipulating them. So even when you manipulate someone into having lunch with you, in the back of your mind, you're like, oh my God, does this person like me? Do they really not like me? Because like, I like sweetened the deal so much, and I offered to pay for their dinner and all this kind of stuff. Would they be here otherwise? That's not what Vivek does. We're on a first name basis now, chat. Come on. Y'all are too, by the way. So he opens the door, and then they are free to come in. And then once they're free to come in, they're kind of relaxed. That's going to relax you a little bit. The other thing that he does, so I think good phrasing. Hey, I'm going to grab lunch today or tomorrow. You know, would you like to join me? I'd love to chat. Right? He's not thinking like, oh my God, does this person think I'm single, not single? Do they like me? Do they not like me? Like, all that. I'm sure the dude has thought it. Would love to hear his story of relationships, and, you know, seems like he's got kids, but who knows? Maybe he's married, maybe he's not married. The other thing is the attitude he takes, which is like, I'm not, you know, I am not negatively impacting someone else. So what he talked about, the really interesting research called the Pygmalion effect, which is basically the psychology of self-fulfilling prophecies, where if you go into a job interview and you think, oh my God, why would these people ever hire me? It tanks your actual performance in the interview. If you give a speech and you realize that the reason that these people have invited me to give this speech or presentation is because I know something that I can share that could help other human beings, I'm going to show up and try to offer whatever I have. And if people want to take it, they can take it. If they don't want to take it, not a big deal. It hurts a little bit, but I can move on. And then the other thing, this I think is huge, which is something that we don't do, is that from a cognitive perspective, he really digests his social interactions. So we do this with our negative social interactions, where if we have something bad happen to us, if we text someone and they don't respond, or we get ghosted once or twice, we will play that through in our heads over and over and over again. What we don't play in our heads over and over and over again are the dozen instances where we texted people and they texted us back right away. So in our mind, we're creating a selection bias towards the worst things. And I have trouble calling him, I could call him Vivek to his face, but we're going to call him Dr. Murthy now. But what Dr. Murthy does is actually sits down and looks at, okay, like when I opened the door for people, what actually happened? Because we don't actually do that. It requires intentionality. And I would bet money that there was a period of time in his life where he was very intentional about his social interactions. The big V. That's right. Top V. CIA on Discord Balding. And I think seriously, y'all should this dude, y'all said it. He's spitting facts. He knows what he's talking about. And I don't say that. I mean, I sort of would have said that. I would have said he is an expert he's an expert doctor, chat. Oh my god, he's an expert. Oh my god. You know, but I mean, I think the dude knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about because he's been there. He's one of us. And if he can do it, y'all can do it. Right? And it doesn't sound like he started becoming like socially adept until med school or even after. I think Alok has a crush. Maybe on you, Kruti. No, but I think it's just, respect. But does he play video games? So I think there are a couple of complicating factors which we're going to have to revisit. The first is, I think Dr. Vivek and I went through a period of like intentional social growth, for lack of a better term. But I do think the world that y'all are living in today is harsher in some ways. So I think the one thing that's really tricky is it's so easy to leave people on red. It's so easy to get nothing from the other person in virtual interactions. So the one thing that I think that he has going for him and I had going for me, like back in the day, is when you're with people face to face, when your circumstances are face to face, I think this strategy works really well. The one adaptation that we have to make, and I'm not quite sure how to make this, is something we're gonna have to figure out, is in a virtual standpoint, what do you do? And maybe the answer is actually really simple. It's that we need to step away from virtual interactions to some degree. Not saying that we should get rid of them entirely, but maybe 20% of your interactions should be in person because that's where this meta works, right? He's got a guide to making friends. But it's so easy to leave people on red. So one thing that I would say to y'all is, one thing we can control is the flip side of the equation. So for y'all to be a little bit more intentional about when someone messages you, don't leave them on red. Because this is also a platform kind of thing, where one of the things that I know is when I log on to a platform and I see new messages, I will read it. But if I'm like in the elevator and reading a message and I don't have time to respond to it, then it goes from unread to read, and then I don't get prompted about it a day later when I have time to respond to it. And then the person gets left unread. So I think there's some weird platform stuff going on here too. But I encourage y'all to not leave people on red. You can even say, hey, got your message. Sorry, I don't have the time to respond. This is something that I'll sometimes say. I'll say, I don't have time in this moment to give this response the time it deserves. But I'll do my best to get back to you within a couple of days. Thanks for sending it. So I'll sort of tell people, hey, I saw this. And then they at least see, right? And then I'll also sometimes say, like, if I don't get back to you, it's not because this isn't important to me. Please feel free to ping me in a few days if you don't hear back. Sometimes I'll say stuff like that. The other thing is, I'm really curious if the dude has really ever played multiplayer games, because he's like, other people are important. And this is, I mean, I think he's an internal medicine doc, but so, he's like been end of life kind of stuff with like cancer and heart attacks and heart failure. And I'm sure he saw all that stuff at the Brigham, which is I think where he trained, and you see it anywhere. And so like the end of your life, and he's right. Like people don't think, I mean, I would concur. People don't think about how many bedrooms they have, or like, oh man, it's really great that we got those faucets replaced with the slightly nicer faucets that were more expensive. I've never heard a single person talk much about material possessions at the end of their life. He's spot on. It's like all relationships. Because I don't think you can bring your faucet, your MMR, or your fancy cosmetic to whatever comes next. And yeah. And so I encourage, like, I don't know exactly what to do about this, but I feel like he's given us a mission. Like, we got to do this, chat. Like, he's doing his part, but we got to do our part. And he can come on here and share his experience. He can write advisories. And by the way, just so y'all know, for every one of these advisories, it's not just research. I mean, these people are like in conversations all day and all night with all kinds of stakeholders. They're talking to parents, they're talking to social media companies, they're talking to politicians, they're talking to the president of the United States, they're talking to professional organizations, they're talking to everybody. And they're grinding, and we got to do our part, which is like reach out to people and apparently start a letter writing campaign. So we're going to see from a community event standpoint whether we can do something like that. Like, I don't know, but I think like we're going to try to do our part and y'all try to do your part. So Inertian is saying they're not talking to me. I respectfully disagree, Inertian. They weren't talking to you until today. Y'all get that? Like, that's pretty cool. Only problem with HG Pen Pals is we're going to be leaking everyone's addresses. So I don't know if we can do that. We're going to train carrier pigeons. That sounds great. Okay. So awesome job, everybody. Thanks for coming here today. We have to figure out who to raid. So what's an appropriate raid after the Surgeon General? And so we're committed to this work, y'all. Whether it's community stuff, so definitely check out Discord. Like, we're trying to solve a lot of these problems, whether it's social sandbox, where y'all can practice speaking. And that's what we also love about group coaching is like group coaching is one of these situations where I just want to talk about this briefly. So one of the hardest things to do in a conversation is to know when are you supposed to speak. And sometimes you have these thoughts like, oh my God, like, am I taking up too much time? That is literally a skill that we train in group coaching. How do you break into a conversation? How do you listen? How do you let people know, hey, today I'm having a rough day and I need a little bit more time? How do you advocate for yourself within a group? How do you balance participation within a group? And what we really tend to see, it's kind of hard, but like you're not there to make friends. And we actually actively discourage people forming relationships outside a group because then it opens up all these other kinds of worms. Everyone's like, we should play games together. And then you play games together and one of y'all feeds. And then what? But a lot of these things are the things that we are trying to fix. And this is what I was saying earlier. Someone was like, Dr. K's Guide to Healthy Eating. Like, we can make that, but that's not exactly what y'all need. I think what we need as a community nowadays is some way to engage. Information can only get us so far. And information can get us a long way, and that's why we have Dr. K's Guide. That's why we do these streams. That's why we have conversations. So if y'all want comprehensive information, check out Dr. K's Guide. If y'all want to really understand what the Surgeon General is talking about, actually read their reports. The reports are really accessible. It's fascinating. They're like 20 pages. And y'all have to do your part too. We're going to do our best to help you. But this is also where if y'all think that we should be doing something, please suggest it. Yeah, let's link. Do we have mods? Here, I can link. So here's the... Sweet Anita is live. Let's raid Anita. Perfect. So check out the youth advisory. Stay tuned to socials and stuff. And a huge shout out to the Office of the Surgeon General. We're grateful for him coming on today. And huge shout out to Squeaks. And huge shout out to y'all for showing up and like being positive and like really listening to what the dude has to say, because the dude is legit. I think we're going to take Friday off stream. We've earned ourselves a break, chat, but we'll probably see y'all maybe early next week. I'm not 100% sure. So take care, everybody, and have a good week. And reach out to someone, by the way. Last thing to do is reach out to someone and say, hey, Was just wondering how you're doing and if you wanted to catch up sometime. Just do that. Right? I'm not so sure about that. I've been thinking about it. You can do that, but that's like you gotta really, put the V in Vivek to be able to do that. And send Sweet Anita some love.